Howdy, and welcome to Director on Directing. If you're a fan of movies about giant monsters, then you likely can't deny that we are living in what is almost certainly a golden age of Godzilla. The big, reptilian, city-stomping machine known as Gojira in his home country of Japan seems to be everywhere right now. And finally, mainstream Western audiences seem to be gaining some appreciation for the character beyond memes or punchlines and pop culture jokes. In the last 10 years alone, we've had an American pro wrestling style Monster Mash revival series produced by Warner Brothers and Legendary Pictures, a trilogy of sci-fi anime films, an actual anime Netflix series, an Amazon Prime series based on the legendary films, a beloved critical epic that swept the Japanese Academy Awards, and most recently, a box office smash hit that snagged the Best Visual Effects Oscar at the American Academy Awards.
Godzilla!
The first Japanese film to ever do so. And with its recent and most suspiciously fanfareless arrival on Netflix, chances are high that you clicked on this video because of that last Oscar-winning epic that has won the hearts and minds of so many audiences in the West. That film, of course, is Godzilla Minus One, hailed by fans and critics alike as not only the best film in the series since the 1954 original, but a legit, crowd-pleasing, modern genre classic that frankly shouldn't be missed. And if you're watching this after seeing Minus One and thinking to yourself, man, that film was great, should I check out more Godzilla films? But there's like 30 movies in this series, how do I know what to watch next? Well, that's what this video is all about. From one lifelong Godzilla fan who discovered him at age 10 via those old Crestwood House monster books that you could find in every public library, to you, a potentially new fan, I give you my recommendations on what you should check out next, inspired by the elements of Minus One that you might have enjoyed the most. And with that, on with the show. Yes, there are 35 Godzilla films as of the making of this video. 30 Japanese entries and 5 American ones. The Japanese films are split into 4 quite distinct eras, which will actually help you figure out what you want to watch. The first of these is the Showa era, named after Emperor Hirohito's posthumous title as Emperor Showa, and covers a series of films from the mid-50s to the late 70s. When people think of goofy rubber suit monsters, bad dubbing, and cheesy plots, they are thinking of the Showa era. It's all about the goofy costumes, the trippy fads from the 60s and 70s, and the big servings of social satire and children's entertainment. This is the era where all the jokes about Godzilla originate from. Next is the Heisei era, named after the reign of Emperor Akihito, which spans from the mid-80s to the early 90s. The Heisei era embraces a dark, technological, almost live-action anime style of filmmaking. The movies are unique in their focus on near-future sci-fi, spectacular action, a darker tone, and the fact that all 7 films from this era exist in the same continuity. They tell one long, sprawling, interlinked story. Second to last is the Millennium Era, starting in the year 2000. These are 6 mostly standalone films that experimented with early use of CGI and took on more of a Hollywood adventure film / blockbuster tone, with a let's have something for everyone kind of attitude in order to appeal to broader audiences outside Japan. And then finally, we arrive in the Reiwa era, named after the current Emperor Naruhito's reign, which started in 2019. Almost as a reaction to the current American series of blockbuster films, this era has brought the most successful and critically acclaimed takes on Godzilla, where the franchise has had an ambitious, almost art house emphasis in its filmmaking, and where each entry has important ideas it wants to explore. Let's face it, Godzilla Minus One is 1 in a million. When the fans hail it as the best film since the original, maybe even better than the original, finding something that comes close to the way it tugs at your heartstrings and makes you cheer for its heroes is a pretty tall order. But the feel-good storytelling isn't all it has going for it. Minus One is an intelligent, layered story, one that approaches its plot, themes, and characters in a thought-provoking manner. It's a film with something to say about PTSD, Japan's role in World War II, the relationship between Japan's citizens and its government, and about community and family. And in that category of meaty, weighty themes, there are 2 movies in Godzilla's filmography that easily goes toe-to-toe with Minus One. The original 1954 Godzilla is the one that started it all. The iconic and culture-defining OG film, starring samurai movie regular Akihiko Hirata, acclaimed stage actress Momoko Kochi, and regular Kurosawa collaborator and general all-round badass Takashi Shimura. And directed by yet another frequent Kurosawa collaborator, Ishiro Honda. The original Godzilla is inspired by the true and tragic story of the Lucky Dragon No. 5 fishing boat that earlier that same year was exposed to the blast and radiation of America's Castle Bravo nuclear test in Bikini Atoll. A test that was 2.5 times more powerful than the Americans had initially estimated, resulting in devastation which gave birth to the anti-nuclear movement. The Lucky Dragon No. 5's crew were irradiated, one of them later dying from the exposure, and this event is recreated in Godzilla's opening scene, where the film's titular monster begins its path of destruction. There is no subtlety here, despite the film's genre trappings. Godzilla's footprint is radioactive. He lays waste to city after city, and the aftermath of his attacks look and feel exactly like footage from the American nuclear attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the firebombing of Tokyo, where nearly 500,000 Japanese civilians were murdered in total. Godzilla is the post-war anxiety of those who have survived a brutal war and the horror of being the only people in the world to be bombed repeatedly by nuclear weapons. The film's human story only serves to reflect that anxiety, as it deftly juggles a scientifically led civil emergency narrative, a hand-wringing love triangle, and a subplot about the creation, use, and disposal of a unique weapon of mass destruction. The visual effects are genuinely striking and memorable, especially for a film of this age, and the photography, design, performances, and atmosphere is incredibly evocative. The original Godzilla is a sad film, filled with tragedy and haunted by the horror of real-world events. It's a classic for a reason, and those reasons still hit hard 70 years later. If you're after something a bit more modern and avant-garde, you can't go wrong with Shin Godzilla. Co-directed by Neon Genesis Evangelion creator Hideaki Anno, as well as anime artist and special effects director Shinji Higuchi. Anyone who is familiar with the works of the anime studio Gainax will feel right at home with this bleak, unsettlingly creepy, and artistically bold reimagining of the monster for our modern age. Shin Godzilla takes the premise of Japan's most famous monster and repurposes him to talk about something much more recent and harrowing in the Japanese subconscious: the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant accident. As the result of the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami, which killed 20,000 people, Fukushima's cooling systems and backups were taken offline, causing the plant's reactors to go into meltdown. Failures to deal with the problem in a timely manner, resulting in a Chernobyl-like irradiation of the surrounding towns of Okuma and Futaba, led to the widespread criticism of the Japanese government's laboriously slow response time and the country's corrupt and nepotistic nuclear industry. Shin Godzilla takes these criticisms and runs with them to its natural conclusion. Shin Godzilla is both a horror movie and political satire, featuring an absolutely gigantic cast of characters who depict not personal stories of human survival, but a community story of how a vast team of scientists, engineers, civic workers, and out-of-the-box thinking politicians come together to face Godzilla when Japan's rule-fixated, tradition-obsessed, and impotent government fails to do anything useful in its time of crisis. There are no romances here, nor depictions of home life or friendships. The characters have no personal arcs in the film, only professional ones, and in a refreshing subversion of the kinds of things we expect to see in a movie, Shin Godzilla's 2-hour runtime is literally just people in the government doing their jobs, working the problem, and trying to survive a catastrophe of unimaginable size and power. Like the Fukushima disaster, it depicts ordinary Japanese people coming together and sacrificing their own lives just to save their country after its government was unable to do so. Anno and Higuchi's visionary directing style takes the forefront in this film. They juggle a cast of thousands against a lumbering, towering, dead-eyed kaiju, photographed in this film to try and reflect the physics of a gigantic monster and how cameras would be used to capture it. But they are also supported by a stacked Japanese cast, led by award-winning actor Hiroku Hasegawa and 2 huge stars of Japanese TV, Yutaka Takenouchi and Satomi Ishihara. Winning 14 categories at the Japanese Oscars, including Best Picture, Shin Godzilla is deliberately arty, uncomfortable, cathartic, and anchored by its themes and real-world inspirations. It's not a monster mash and barely would count as an action film, but it will unsettle you and linger in your brain long after you've seen it. Look, I get it. Sometimes all you just want is a really good time watching big monsters go at it. That is the core of all Godzilla films and the defining characteristic of most of them. And if you love the incredibly well-designed, paced, and executed action of Godzilla Minus One, then really there's nothing in Big G's filmography that comes as close as America's legendary Monsterverse, and specifically its first 2 and best entries. Director Gareth Edwards' Godzilla is renowned by fans for what it almost was, only to fall short in the final stretch. Edwards' own limitations for directing actors and crafting story has been cited as major flaws in the film, as well as the movie's very unwise shift of focus away from its best character, played by Bryan Cranston, to its far more bland and unsympathetic leads, played by Aaron Taylor-Johnson and Elizabeth Olsen. And not even the great Ken Watanabe and Sally Hawkins can help the situation, since they're not actually characters, just exposition devices. But that's not what you're actually watching this for. You want giant monster action, and Gareth Edwards, with his incredible eye for visual effects, design, and ambitious set pieces, delivers in spades. The same talent that gives us films like Rogue One and The Creator applies his aesthetic to Godzilla, and what comes out is a genuinely fun, richly atmospheric, and suitably dark disaster film meets monster battle. 2014's Godzilla is the good kind of leave-your-brain-at-the-door blockbuster that tries to make emotional sense and tense, scale-accurate spectacle out of a relatively cheesy and largely hand-waved story. But this is a film where you do come for the vibes, but you stay for the spectacle. And also, try to ignore the humans as best you can. 2019's follow-up, Godzilla King of the Monsters, directed by Michael Dougherty of Krampus and Trick or Treat fame, cashes its chips in the opposite direction to Gareth Edwards' predecessor. Where 2014's Godzilla tries to bring us a dour, serious, not your dad's Godzilla film experience, King of the Monsters revels in Big G's goofy Japanese sci-fi and monster wrestling match heritage. King of the Monsters wants you to have fun, and it delivers that by walking a thin tightrope of outlandish American sci-fi silliness and yet scary, deadly, beautifully rendered, giant monster action. It's a heart-on-sleeve love letter to Godzilla's sillier Showa-era films and even his earlier animated incarnations. This film delivers what Godzilla fans were hankering to see in Edward's prior film, Godzilla facing off against his most famous foes, Rodan, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, the three-headed dragon. Doherty and his team deliver the goods in big-budget, B-movie good times, where you don't have to leave your brain at the door because the film isn't trying to pretend that it's smart, only that it can deliver the thrills and spills you want from giant monster action. Godzilla, King of the Monsters, lives up to its namesake. Also, it has an even more stacked cast than the Edwards film, which is kind of amazing given that this is not a movie that needs a collection of actors with this level of caliber. Still, it's great to see them all here, and clearly enjoying themselves in a Godzilla film. Let's get to it. If Godzilla films have any defining feature that unites almost the entire franchise, it's dudes in rubber suits. They aren't just emblematic of a Godzilla movie, they are a cultural expectation. Almost the entirety of Godzilla's fan base, at least until 2023, was established by a shared passion of creature suits, monster wrestling matches, and the destruction of beautiful miniature sets. This is considered by most to be the fun of Godzilla. You want to see dudes in rubber suits duking it out? Well, here are the three best in that category. Likely the silliest and yet still incredibly earnest film in our list, Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, is a culmination of just about everything 1960s science fiction action cinema had to offer in just one single film. It's got UFOs, aliens, spies, detectives, political intrigue, do-gooding journalists, and not one, not two, nor three, but 4 kaijus battling for supremacy, in a film that, like the Universal Monsters franchise, defined the notion of a cinematic universe long before Marvel resurrected the idea. Ghidorah pits Godzilla with other kaiju who initially appeared in their own films for Toho Studios. These include Rodan, Mothra, here only appearing in her caterpillar form, and of course, Ghidorah, the three-headed golden dragon from outer space. The story is charmingly convoluted in the same style as a 60s James Bond movie, with a princess from a remote, unnamed country being possessed by an alien who foretells the coming of Ghidorah and a race against time to figure out what to do about it. Naturally, the solution involves getting a bunch of anti-hero monsters to fight the obviously villainous one. All the while, the humans try to deal with assassins, prophecies, and other mysterious goings-on. Directed once again by Ishiro Honda, who rolled with the studio's demand for turning Big G movies into a more family-friendly affair. The film sees the return of original Godzilla stars Takashi Shimura and Akihiko Hirata in different minor roles, and features future Bond girl Akiko Wakabayashi. Tonally, the film draws largely from its 2 prior entries in the series, the highly satirical comedy adventure King Kong vs. Godzilla, and the anti-capitalist crime caper Mothra vs. Godzilla. Nonetheless, Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, is a high-water mark and genre staple for Suitmation kaiju action films from the Showa era. And is also a one-stop shop for all those classic Godzilla tropes people like to make fun of, from the goofy monster designs to the aimlessly useless cast of humans filling up the runtime. If you have to see one Showa-era monster mash, make sure it's this one. Not just for its 4-way kaiju wrestling match, but also because its story and characters are wonderfully bizarre in the most watchable and enjoyable way possible. I'm not gonna lie, The Return of Godzilla also known as Godzilla 1984, is a personal favorite of mine, and that is largely why I'm recommending it here, despite the flaws that it has. Return is the first reboot the Godzilla series ever had, a concerted attempt to shake off the kids' movie trappings of the last 11 films and repurpose the character for a more modern age, or at least for the 1980s. In this film, Godzilla is a very unsubtle representation of the Cold War between Russia and the United States, a war that Japan has often found itself squished in between these two gigantic superpowers. In short, Godzilla's return from his annihilation in 1954 triggers a series of events that sees Japan threatened not only by a giant monster attack, but also a second nuclear annihilation. The story revolves around a scientific team dealing with Godzilla and the Japanese Prime Minister trying to stop Russia or America from nuking Japan as a last-ditch resort for dealing with Big G. It's not enough to land any kind of emotionally wrought narrative, but it is enough to get the action going, and the return of Godzilla is all about that, as the Japanese throw planes, tanks, laser cannons, and what is ostensibly an armored flying saucer at the kaiju. Where Return shines is in its tone, its special effects, and its oppressive sense of doom and gloom. It's a dark, apocalyptic film with an unsettling musical score and some of the best imagery of the series captured with suitmation and miniatures. Although later films sees him square off against some absolutely incredible monsters amidst some schlocky sci-fi B-movie antics, Return, with our titular character fighting humans, is the only one in the Heisei era that feels classy, thematically rich, and with the most attention to detail when it comes to its effects, even if the film's story is a bit slow and its characters are a little sterile. If you like that classic dark 80s vibe, or if you're a fan of manga and anime from the era, or if you just want to see a Godzilla film that invests in its tone and strengths as hard as -1 does, The Return of Godzilla is worth giving a try. If you took a poll of Godzilla fans before 2019, and asked them what their favorite Godzilla film was, chances are this movie would be in their top 3, maybe even top 2. Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All-Out Attack is as ridiculous a title as it is a mouthful, but the filmmakers were right in not worrying about what the film is called when they had such a perfect piece of entertainment in their hands. GMK is considered to be the ultimate in rubber suit monster mash films for many reasons, including its fun fantasy story filled with memorable characters, its terrific visual effects and creature design, its superbly choreographed and executed fights, its kick-ass sound design, and its musical score, and much, much more. A lot of the credit for GMK's success falls on its writer-director Shusuke Kaneko, who was already well known at the time for directing a trilogy of films that many have argued are the greatest kaiju movies ever made, the Gamera trilogy. Three dark, creepy, action-packed, and intense films that reinvents Gamera, a giant flying turtle monster who protects children, into a force of unstoppable destruction and high-octane power. Kaneko was renowned as a master of kaiju cinema despite only making 3 films, and now, with GMK, he finally gets to play with Godzilla himself. GMK is arguably the most blockbuster-esque out of all the films in this list, and closest in tone to -1, with its deft mixture of adventure, comedy, and genuinely likable humans who fill up the screen time between the monster battles. The film is firmly fixed within the fantasy genre, as it depicts Godzilla as a supernatural threat driven by the spirits of those murdered by Japan during World War II. Unable to stop Big G, Japan now must be saved by a trio of guardian spirits, Barugon, Mothra, and, in a rare heroic appearance, King Ghidorah. Like the Gamera trilogy, GMK is a finely tuned and cleverly devised spectacle with a focus on action and destruction. Its breezy pace is filled with intrigue, suspense, mystery, fantastical imagery, and relatable, non-boring characters, played by an eclectic cast made up of Japanese rock stars, video game voice actors, and genre veterans. But what really makes GMK so good is the way that it handles itself, delivering sequence after sequence that sears itself into your mind, either through its fantastic suitmation, including one of the best-looking Godzillas in history, its unique ability to juggle serious and dark moments with light-hearted ones, its genuine sense of scale and threat the monsters pose, or its overall slick presentation, where everything looks great, sounds even better, and feels like the perfect realization of what the Showa-era films were aiming for. Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters, All-Out Attack is a film stacked with everything that made the prior 50 years of kaiju cinema so exciting, all in one neat little package. And that's all we have time for today. 7 movies for you to continue your Godzilla journey from -1. And we also know that there is still more content on its way within the Godzilla franchise, including the much-awaited sequel to Godzilla -1, and even more entries in the legendary Monsterverse. In short, it's a good time to be a brand new Godzilla fan because you are on a journey of discovery that will reward you in ways you can't imagine, as well as make you laugh your ass off at things you didn't believe were possible. Until next time, keep on stomping, Goji fans. This video is made with acknowledgement of the amazing work already produced by Godzilla fans on YouTube, specifically Big Action Bill and his ridiculously well-researched oral histories on every Godzilla film ever made, up from the depth reviews of every kaiju film ever made, Matt Draper's excellent overview of the various cinematic eras in Godzilla history, Accented Cinema's philosophical unpackings of the series, and Cold Crash Pictures' wonderful explorations of early Godzilla films viewed through different academic, political, and cultural lenses. Check out the links to their channels on the doobly-doo below. If you like this video, please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you'll never miss any future content. And if you want to help me make more videos like these, please support me on my Patreon. Most filmmakers are poor, and I am no exception to that, and every dollar helps me out. Thank you.